So as I was saying, reporting to him, being in human resources, it's important that I'm on my P's and Q's and understand, what I'm giving. Reason being is what staff usually don't see is, especially within human resources, appraisals are not just a way for you to explain yourself, but it's also a record that as management uses oftentimes to make sure that not only are we keeping track of your performance, but then if there's any kind of issue that happens from the end of your appraisal one year to the next, anything in between, the first things that we'll ask in HR was, well, how did you document them, or how did they document themselves, right? So it's your source not only of how you're doing for performance, how you're doing for merit, for any kind of increase that you might get, but it also could be a way for you to defend yourself on your work should any kind of performance management result for something. So if any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt as I go through this. So I want to do a quick poll. If you feel free to either raise your hands on screen or come off mute. But who isn't nervous when you talk about yourself? Show of hands. Who does not get nervous when you talk about yourselves? Right? No hands. We all get nervous when we talk about ourselves. It's human nature, and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to get nervous. It's okay to get gun shy. It's okay to forget things. But what happens is that you don't want to show it, and you want to be prepared for it. And the annual performance review is your time to really make sure that, yes, you might be nervous. Yes, you might have messed up on saying something that you wish you would have said in a meeting. I can't think about how many times I said in a meeting, I'm just like, darn, I wish I would have brought that point up. Or I wanted to ask for something and I didn't get it, but I might have missed 2 points, right? It's your way to prepare and really capture everything that you've wanted to say that you didn't have a chance to say that showcases you on paper. It's if you've ever had to self-appraise yourself before, you want to think about what your thoughts or feelings are about the process. You want to think about what information or documents that you need to help complete yourself, to help put yourself out there. And you want to you want to provide written feedback on your performance and accomplishments. So, how to make this process work for you? It's what I'm going to give you a lot of the tips that I do for myself and what I've seen that works. First, you want to look at the past fiscal year to see how you've performed. And one thing I want to note is some of us might be doing annual performance reviews. That was the way that or that's the way that the university commonly refers to things, the annual appraisal. But there's been some groups that moved on to ongoing feedback, and you might be having more reoccurring feedback meetings, maybe once every quarter. No matter if it's the annual or no matter if it's the quarterly one, you want to look at your past. If it's the quarterly, you look at your last 3 months worth of activity you had written about. If it's the past fiscal one, you looked at that and you want to look at your goals. You want to literally print it out and take out the goals that you had to accomplish from that fiscal year. You want to look to see and plan and prepare. Here are the goals that I needed to address, and you want to be able to defend if you were able to address them, and if you weren't, why not? You want to then document. You want to document your contributions to the department, to the division, to the university. Talk about what types of trainings you need in order to be successful. You want to think about development opportunities. You want to talk about your contributions. So, I even sometimes when you think about plan, prepare, and document, I even create a folder in Outlook that I call annual teams, notes, and comments. And anytime someone says, thank you for your help in X, I put it in that folder. Anytime my boss says, can you be a part of this group? I put it in that folder. Anytime there's a project that was completed, I move it to that folder. So you want to be, when you talk about be prepared, you don't have to wait for, I joked in the beginning, even though I'm not joking, I haven't done mine yet. I haven't started, I will, but I'm not nervous because I have this folder that is a draft that has everything in there that I've done, that all I have to do is go back to the folder, refer to it, and start writing. And then you want to share. You want to make sure that you toot your own horn. You don't know what your manager or leader is going to say when it comes time to your meetings. So you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the recognition that you deserve for the work that you've done all year. Give feedback on how you met your goals and expectations. You want to give feedback on professional development efforts. How did you demonstrate or outline the competencies that you needed for your job? what efforts were undertaken to help further your professional development. And then you want to identify professional development needs that you desire for the next year. And we're going to go into all of these specifically. So the first one is just where to start. You know, you heard me say that first and foremost, I have this document or this folder in Microsoft Outlook that I use. It's my annual folder, and what I have in there, I have the goals. So I will take the draft performance appraisal that was done the year prior, and I will print that out. I'm going to look at all my goals, and I will highlight all the ones I accomplished, and I literally put a circle around the ones that I did not accomplish. And when I look at the ones I didn't accomplish, there needs to be a supporting reason why. And my boss typically knows about that, right? So I'll go in there and I'll jot first by hand what I've done and what I didn't. Then you want to talk about any expectations or any projects that you were part with for the year that maybe didn't start off at the end of the last year, but you somehow got, thrown into mid-year. You want to review the current goals, collect anything that supports it. Like I said, the good emails, the feedback. You want to look for pertinent accomplishments. If you complete the self-appraisal, self-appraisal, you want to look at to see, are you meeting goals? How are you responding if your department still does competencies? How are you doing with those competencies? What professional developments do you need? So you want to look and literally just gather everything that you need. One of the other items I tell people to gather to is if you have your job description or your PIQ. What PIQ stands for Position Identifying Questionnaire. It's basically a job description, but pen speak, it's called PIQ. You want to get your PIQ out and see what it listed that your job was supposed to entail, and use that to also write and establish what you're doing. A lot of times you'll see that you're doing, there's funny things that people put on job descriptions that says other duties as assigned. 9 times out of 10, the work you're doing is other duties as assigned. It's things that management did not have the foreknowledge to say this needs to go on the job description. So they put that little line there. 9 times out of 10, what you're doing is not on your job description. You want to expand yourself, expand your goals, listing down those other duties as assigned on your performance appraisal, because when it comes time for merit, when it comes time, even it may not be the merit increase, but when it comes time for you to apply or to ask for an increase in work, you can then list and say, look, here are all the other duties that I'm doing. So it's a catch-22. It helps doing appraisals, but it can also help and be an advocate for you during off appraisal times. The next thing you want to do is, beyond starting here and addressing the professional development plans, you want to market yourself. You want to market yourself, and I can't say that again. You want to market yourself. You want to think about, did you volunteer for anything? And if you haven't volunteered for anything in this last year, note to yourself, think about it moving forward. But what can you volunteer to be a part of? If you see your boss is struggling with something that might be your forte, can I take it off your hands? Or I want professional development or cross training in some kind of area or function. I know this group is doing this. I would love to sit on that committee. Volunteer yourself for something. And if you haven't, or if you have, what did you volunteer yourself for that you can write down and say how you did? Did you help save any kind of money? Did you help with any kind of avoiding any disasters? Is there something new that you started doing because of COVID? Is there a new initiative that you created or that you worked on? Those are the kind of things that you want to think about when you talk about marketing yourself. You want to cite specific examples of how you achieved or established your goals. So you go back and you look at your goal sheet, and let's say, one of my goals is to do predictive analytics. And for the first time, I worked with Wharton and we collaborated on doing people analytics. In my goals, I will cite and give those examples. I coordinated with Wharton People Analytics. We combined our two efforts. We worked with the fellows, so we think about the university's example or university's mission of students and research. I combined what we do in HR with our students, brought it together for one of my goals, which is predictive analytics, and now I'm starting to build off explaining the specific examples that I use to achieve my goals. You want to describe your results and your efforts. In our predictive analytics modeling, I'll keep to that example. It was successful. We were able to predict what turnover would look like up to year 2025. And my efforts for that modeling is the Wharton analytics team. I would literally specify how it contributed to the team, how it contributed to the university, and what the results were for those that partnered with me. You want to note areas that you took initiative on. You want to note areas that you made improvements on. You want to discuss any kind of contributions or impact that you had towards your department, your school, or your center goals. Oftentimes, our the Penn Compact, we think of inclusion, impact, and innovation. If I stay on the predictive analytics example that I just gave, we made, we included Wharton and the fellows and students as part of our goals, but then we made an impact doing the first ever predictive modeling across the senior EVP area. So you want to talk about how you contributed to touch on the goals outside, if you did some larger speak on it. And you want to explain how you enhance during all of that, how you enhance your own skills and abilities. So you see on here, I put, are you a member or an officer in any kind of professional associations? Do you do any kind of mentoring? It's okay to talk about those things. I may not mentor anyone here within our department, but I know that this young youth is looking to come work here at Penn, and I spend X amount of time during a week talking to them to build yourself up, talk about everything that you do that's positive, that's added to your contributions. You want to also look to grow yourself. And what I mean by grow yourself is, a lot of times we focus on here's what we've done, but we don't talk and use the opportunity to try to help. I mean, we work at an institution of higher education. Penn is a place where we want to see people developed. So use this as an opportunity to sell yourself on the skills that you need. And it might be selling yourself on the skills that you need for your current role, but a lot of times I tell people, develop yourself up, develop yourself out, develop yourself for what you want your next role to be. It's great to have tools to support you in what you're doing currently, but at least for me, my mindset is always, what is my next role going to be? How can I develop myself for what I want to do next? So when I say grow yourself, I mean that part of your review, part of your self-appraisal, or your ongoing feedback should be, what kind of development opportunities should your supervisor be helping you prepare for to get that next role that you want to succeed in your next move? Or if it's in your current move, what skills are they lagging and giving to you that you want to see from them? And you want a paragraph or a chunk of time developed to this. You want to think about what you believe you need. And how I usually do this is, in the first part where we talked about market yourself, I talked about getting your job description or your PIQ. In this part, when I say grow yourself, what I do is literally I get job descriptions of jobs that I want. So, right, the first part is you're looking at your job description. Next step is you're looking at job descriptions that you want to be in. And I literally will highlight things that I do not have for my next role. My next role, by God's grace, will be to lead an HR organization. I'm taking those CHRO descriptions and I'm highlighting the gaps that I have. So on my reviews, literally what I put on there are the items that I have missing, and I want my boss to give me the tools that I need to get them. Don't be afraid to do that. So you want to develop your plan for what you believe you need. You want to discuss it with your supervisor to see if they agree. And you're not going to say, I'm using this to get out of this department, right? You're going to say, I'm using this, and I think that with these skills, they will help me in my current role. And they will help me you think about what you want your pitch or your sales pitch to be for it, but you discuss it and you tell your supervisor, with these missing skills, it will help you get what you need to be successful in your role. And then you begin to implement it, right? It could be extended over possible appraisal cycles, specifically for people doing ongoing feedback. It may not just be one quarter. You may need to work on it and develop it. Or for others who are doing the annual review, it might be something that you have to have continuously on there. But you want to discuss professional development plans to enhance your job performance and then your career goals. It could be formal or informal training. There's courses that are supported by the division in HR. There's LinkedIn Learning courses. You could refer to those, or there could be external networks that you might say, I want to be a part of. And it could be that. You want to think about developmental assignments. Are there any kind of assignments or project teams or committees that you can sit on? Is there a mentor or a trainer or other coworkers that you would like to shadow or be a part of? Are there any kind of, you might be doing something within your area that is outdated or that is, it's time for makeover and you haven't said anything. It's your opportunity to be bold and say, you know what, this is the process we've been doing. It's time intensive, it's labor intensive, it costs us a lot of money, but I thought about it and here are some new ideas for us to consider. It might be an opportunity for you to use your appraisal to design or revamp a program or a process. And then you want to look to enhance the competencies that are needed on the job and work on your career goals. So that, on the screen it says the gap analysis. That's really what the gap, right? You want to look at what you're currently doing versus what you could be doing and what's in between. And the in between stuff is really what you need to figure out how to grow yourself and get you the skills that you need. And then lastly, just to recap, how to ensure the appraisal and feedback success is really be prepared. The worst thing you can do is go to a meeting and not prepared. So we talked about the documentation. You want to give the examples, you want to give the feedbacks, you want to, if you get an email from someone that says thank you for great work or thank you for how you participated in this or thank you for your contributions to something, all of those emails, you want to save them, literally save them, and don't be afraid to print them and showcase them during your meeting. You want to take time and understand your own expectations. One thing I've noticed and speaking to staff, and then also to managers, is sometimes, when in communication, it's easy, whether it's communication in the workplace, communication at home, communication with a parent and child, sister, brother, whatever the case is. Oftentimes you hear something and receive it differently, not necessarily the way that it was intended. You want to make sure that you understand your expectations. So what I mean by that is understand what you're putting out there to your supervisor and what you're asking for. Because a lot of times you might go in here asking for something and you don't understand the unintended consequences of what you asked. You also want to make sure that if you're being asked by your supervisor or manager to be able to provide, or they're setting goals or expectations for you, you want to find out from them what those, like, make sure so what I'm hearing you say is you want me to this. You want to use clarifying questions. Make sure that you, before you're finished with the appraisal review, before you finish with your self-appraisal, that you really understand everything that's going into it so that there's no disconnect or misunderstanding. Then you want to be present. You want to physically be present, make sure that there's no distraction, no barriers when you're writing your performance appraisal. You want to make sure that you're in tune with what you're asking. You want to make sure that it really resonates with you and make sure that there's nothing else that you've missed that you shouldn't be putting down. Then you want to mentally focus on your goal. You want to focus on the goal for yourself, but then also the other person's goals, right? How does what I want meet my manager or supervisor where they're coming from, where they're at, where the university as a whole we need to be. So be present, literally tune everything out, and I, prior to COVID, there's many occasions where I needed to do my self-appraisal and I took half a day or took a day so that literally I could be present and focus on that period. And, my husband at the time would laugh and say, you're just being extra. To him, it's extra, but to me, it's not extra. It's literally, I want to make sure I'm getting everything because, like I said in the beginning, it's not about what I want for right now. It's also, I'm using my appraisal to get me somewhere. I'm using it at some point in after appraisal period. I've already set you up. I've set my manager up, whether they realize it or not, because I want more, whether it's more money, whether it's more job enlargement, it's something. But that appraisal time, it's my opportunity with myself to get my thoughts and everything in order and in focus the way I need to be. Then you need to be open to receive it. You need to be open, and this is, different from the appraisal. Now we're thinking beyond the appraisal period. You need to be able and open to receive what you're going to get. A lot of times, we think about the appraisal and we want to make sure that we're putting out there what we've done. We want to make sure that we're putting out there how we feel that we did. And when we do it, our manager might hit us back and say, well, that's how you think you did, but let me tell you what I saw, right? You need to be open to receive the fact that even though this is what you see of yourself and what you know, how you sold yourself and what you need, be open to receive that you might not hear everything the same way that you received it yourself. So listen for content, listen for feelings, look at the body language, listen to the cues, and then demonstrate your listening, look at the successes, but then be open. Be open to hear what they're saying. Be open to hear what they're giving back and see how you can engage in constructive dialogue back and forth. You then want to reflect. You want to confirm what you're hearing. So what I'm hearing you say is, what I believe I'm hearing you say is that this. And then you want to summarize and rephrase. So an example is, I think I did great on that predictive analytics thing I told you guys about earlier. And my boss might say, you know what, it wasn't the outcome that we wanted. You did great. However, the modeling wasn't the best. It was, anything negative that I could think of. How can I receive that information, but then tie it into something different? That's what I mean by receiving. You listen to it, but just be open-minded. You don't want to be defensive if something is not received in the same intent as what you have it. And then the measurements of successes. So I understand that. However, I'd be okay to say that, I felt differently. However, how can I meet you at that point of success where you see it going? What can I have done differently, and how can we partner to do it differently? And then you want to, part of that reflection is, don't be afraid. Sometimes people do the appraisals or the ongoing feedback and feel like they're done. It's one and done. I can't make modifications. I can't change it. Don't be afraid to, after you reflect, ask for an opportunity. You should be doing this anyway. Ask for an opportunity before you finalize and check off and sign your name that you've reviewed and you summarized. Don't be afraid to summarize and rephrase, confirm what you're hearing, but then also make modifications as needed based on what you both just dialogued. Take some time. It doesn't have to be that you're sitting across from your manager and you immediately sign off because you guys had the conversation. It's okay to say, I just need some time to reflect on what I've heard. I need some time just to make sure that I understand it, and then I'll come back to you. And then you want to avoid any kind of judgment towards yourself, towards your manager, and be open-minded. The worst thing that you can do during appraisal time is to be defensive, is to be combative. So worst case, you say, let me think about something. You just listen to it, you go back, you say, take your time, think it through, and then you come back once you've had a time to kind of let calmer heads prevail. Any questions or any comments?
Yeah, I have a question
Yeah.
for you. I guess it's around, because after you had your evaluation and you want to discuss salary or salary increases. I know one challenge that I have had is getting access to information about salary ranges. I guess Penn is a private institution, so they don't publish it. But I guess as far as trying to negotiate, like how can you find that information, or at least know that, what you're asking for is in the right range, and that you're not, getting something that's lower than what it should be?
So I can say, so you're right in the sense that Penn does not publish that information. I do know now, though, that online now, when you go to post for jobs, it does give you the ranges. So there should be some way, an opportunity for you to be able to see the ranges. I don't know what it looks like for like our existing jobs, but you might be able to find comparable jobs through that. The other thing I'll say to you is, don't always just go to your manager and take what your manager says as gospel. Reach out to your HR person. Typically you all have some HR designee within your area that should be able to help you understand the processes you're going through. Managers don't necessarily know everything, and for them, they might look at other staff and say, you're paid equitably based on what I see for this staff, or, I've heard or I've seen that this is where you came in at, and nothing's changed. Reach out to your HR person and ask them, literally, and use the words, ask them to help you do a competitive, thorough compensation analysis of what you're making, and ask that they actually explain to you how they did the process. Oftentimes we get And even, despite what role I have, I get nervous to ask for a raise sometimes. I get nervous to say, are you sure it's in line with, don't be afraid to ask those questions. When you're not sure, the worst that they could say is no. The worst that they could do is not tell, right? But if you don't ask, you won't know. And 9 times out of 10, I think any HR person will sit down and be able to explain to you what kind of compensation practices that they're doing, or what they looked at, or what they give you an ample justification to explain why your compensation is the way that it needs to be. Does that help, Stephen?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I received a message in the chat about, unable to locate my original PIQ. I would say the same thing there. I would prefer, if your manager can't do it, go to HR. Typically, they have those things on file and they should be able to help you locate it. Um, Someone else said, talked about the negotiating is hard work. Negotiating is hard work. Negotiating is hard work. I'm actually the one of 2 chief negotiators here at Penn for union collective bargaining agreements. And it's not an easy feat. It's definitely hard. It helps to skill in being able to talk about how to negotiate salaries and things for me. But like I said, even in my role, I still get nervous. I mean, the way we open this up, it's human nature, and it's okay to get nervous. I think that's as people, that's how we are, right? We get scared of the no. If you think of as a child, one of the first things that they start saying is, or that one of the first things they start picking up is no, because as parents, that's what we do to keep them safe, right? But it's just a no. Don't worry about the negotiations. I think Valerie and Darren and Corinne have the things we talked about, negotiating and knowing your worth. It's hard work, but it pays off. If you don't start the process, it's even harder because you're putting yourself aside and behind. Someone else mentioned, can I talk about the gap analysis again? And again, the gap is taking, so I talk about market yourself and then sell yourself, right? It's about, there's 2 different gaps you want to look at. First, look at the gap of your current role versus, or look at the gap of your last appraisal versus where you are now. What was it in between that you did not accomplish? So first, you're writing your accomplishments. You're saying, here's what my last performance appraisal was. Here are the things I accomplished. And then you've circled any gaps that you had that did not lend you to complete the appraisal satisfactorily. You want to make sure that you address that, and you don't want your manager to be the only one that's addressing what you didn't accomplish. So if there's any kind of existing gaps, you are able to say, for when you're selling yourself, I didn't accomplish this, but here's why. In all honesty, I'll call myself out. One of my goals this year that I had was to do more predictive modeling. And I have 2 people on my data team, and I'm without one left. With the amount of work that we have to do normally, plus the amount of work that we have to do since COVID hit, I can't ask one person to do predictive modeling for me the way that we did in the past. So that goal was put on hold. So now when I do my appraisal, I'm going to have to explain and justify why we didn't do it. But again, I know that my gaps were, here's where we wanted to be, but here's where we are now, and then I'll be able to explain exactly why I wasn't able to meet that goal. But it's in sight for another time. So that's the one for selling yourself. For marketing yourself, you want to take a resume and a job description from a job that you want. You want to look at your current resume, look at your current job description versus the one that you want, and then you want to identify what gaps exist between what skills you have and what skills that you need. And then you want to be able to explain as part of your self-appraisal what development opportunities you're asking for from your leader that you want them to give to you to help you better yourself in your current role. Okay. So hopefully that helps with the gap. The other question I see is, what should you do if you don't agree with your supervisor's evaluation? If you don't agree with it, one of the last comments on the board said you want to reflect. The worst thing I think anyone can do is you get combative during that meeting. You want to reflect, you want to hear what they're saying, you want to take it in, you want to calm down before you respond. and then ask them for more time to meet. You know, I've heard what you say. Do you mind if we end the meeting here and let me come back to you and once I've had a chance to reflect and to gather my thoughts? I think, you know, if you have anything that you can say to offer them that doesn't necessarily come off as combative, come across as defensive, and you can say it during that same meeting, then I think it's fine to continue the conversation. But if not, it's okay to halt it. And even if you finish that conversation, you don't have to sign off on your appraisal immediately. It's recommended to take some time, reflect on what you've heard, make any necessary modifications or additions that you need to, have another meeting with them, and then sign off on it. So don't rush to say that you agree with something that you don't need to. It's okay to take your time and reflect to make sure that you're all on the same page and in sync. Another question is if you are looking to grow in this organization beyond your current position and need to gain new skills, how do you discuss it with your supervisor? A good supervisor will want to discuss it with you. A good supervisor should be the one initiating that conversation with you, period. If you don't have a supervisor who's doing that already with you, you should embed it typically and hopefully you know, we all are in organizations that are in support of not just waiting annually. I believe in weekly or bi-weekly one-on-one sessions. So hopefully you all work with a supervisor who's having a one-on-one with you, if it's monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever that the case is. But hopefully they are engaging with you in conversation. They're engaging with you about how you're doing, where you are, so that you're not blindsided in the annual appraisal review. But then also you can also use that as an opportunity to share with that supervisor that you know, you're ready for professional development. You're ready for more. You are looking to enhance your skills. You're looking to broaden your scope of work. You're looking to enlarge your performance, and you want more from them. I know that I meet with my team bi-weekly, and at the end of every meeting, it's two things that we talk about. What can I do to support you more that I'm currently not doing? And then what do you need from me to help you move beyond? And you know, every month I challenge my team to think about what stretch assignments they can be doing or what more do they want to be doing. And oftentimes if I feel like someone is not, if I feel like someone isn't, you know, either as busy or as stressed as they should, I tell them, I want you to tell me where you want to be in a year or where you see your job being in a year, and try to help them gain that knowledge that they need to give us more, to give themselves more from the position. Um, Another question is, how do you, excuse me. So the other question is, how do you use, you know, if I use annual ongoing feedback and not the annual performance review, how do you, sometimes it seems like I'm writing the same things every 3 months. So for people who are doing the ongoing feedback and not the annual, it can seem daunting. It seems like a lot because you're only focused on, let's say if you're focused on January, February, March, what did you do during that time frame? So you want to, you know, something else that I do is I flag, if for ongoing feedback, I flag emails that I had to do for that specific chunk of time. What were the emails that my supervisor sent to me, and how did I respond to them? What was the activity? So that's how you focus on a smaller amount of time. Same similar thing that I mentioned in moving folders to an annual performance appraisal or an annual performance folder, create one for ongoing feedback. And then as things are done from that feedback period, delete them and put something else new in there. So you just continually refresh your content. And then as far as performance development, I think one of the things with ongoing feedback is, and I, like as I said, I mentioned to my team, sometimes my team might have, you know, it's hard to accomplish development opportunities within 3 months. So some of it might be reoccurring for 2 feedback sessions or 3, but then I'm asking for progress updates. You know, you had to do this. Tell me how you accomplished this. One thing I'm big on within my team is that they should network. You know, you want to, the last question I think that was asked is, if you're looking to grow in this organization beyond, how do you gain skills? How do you discuss it? Beyond discussing it, you need to do stuff about it, right? And what I tell my team constantly is, you know, if you don't want to stay here, that's completely fine. But to be able to grow in your work or to be able to grow, period, you need to network. You need to network with others. And so I'm constantly drilling on them to join professional network organizations. Sometimes that stays as a permanent thing on their development opportunities because I'll check in the next feedback time and I say, what did you join? It's just like, oh, I joined this, but have you attended any sessions? No, I haven't. So it stays on there. The next session is, did you attend any sessions? No, so it stays on there. So some of the things can be repetitive and stay on there just as opportunities to make sure just because we talked about it doesn't mean that it's been done. We need to continuously follow up. The next question I have is, can you talk about the move to ongoing evaluations and not annual appraisals? So how that came about, I led in 2015, the department that I was under at the time was led by a woman named Sharon Ayler. And Sharon in 2014, I think one of the goals that we had within the department where we worked was to look at the annual appraisal system and see if we should keep it, leave it, figure out how best to help staff really in support of the feedback process and make it like a true, genuine two-way dialogue between employees and their supervisors. So Sharon charged me back at that time with taking hold of the performance reviews and understanding how they were done at Penn, looking at other industries beyond Penn, and just seeing if our annual reviews were the future of the world or if we should do something else. I formed a committee back then, and we read some books. We attended different workshops on appraisals and what they look like, and then also we engaged with our IB peers to poll and to see what they were doing. Long story short, after doing some focus groups across campus with other schools and centers, it became apparent that, while fondly feedback was what we were doing across campus, some people felt, the majority of people felt like they were only receiving feedback one time annually during this session, and a lot of times, similar to what I said to you all, it's easy to lose track of what you've done in a year. They felt like a lot of what they would want to capture wasn't being captured, or they felt like their manager was just regurgitating what they would say in their self-appraisals and spitting it back on them. So that's where we created the ongoing feedback model in 2017 that we rolled out with, and we rolled it out in cascading forms over the course of the last few years. But the difference is annual appraisals are done typically, they start around March and they go on, I think you start in March or in April, and by May you're done. You sit down for hours and you write down everything that you've done over the last period of a year. Whereas ongoing feedback is, they're not tied to ranking. So whereas the annual appraisals, you're ranked by, strongly exceeds, moderately exceeds, or does not succeed. Ongoing feedback, there is no tying of the ranking system. You meet with your manager, and it's a co-leading. So the employee, and the feedback system is only done once annually. Ongoing feedback is open 24/7. So at any point in time, it's real time. You can go in there and enter any kind of accomplishment or feedback you have in the system. Ongoing feedback also, it's engages in dialogue, and the questions that I told you not to be afraid to say to your supervisor. In the annual appraisal model, in the ongoing feedback model, it actually listed on there, like it has, what can my supervisor do to help me, support me better? So you're forced to tell your supervisor what you need from them. So it engages in more two-way conversation and feedback than the annual. Other question in the chat, what is the benefits of ongoing versus annual? It's to each its own. Some people prefer it. Some people prefer the annual. Some people prefer ongoing. Ongoing feedback is my baby. Like I said, I championed and piloted the program. For me, the difference is it's creating a culture where managers don't have a choice but to speak to their employees more times during a year. Far too often we heard from people saying, my manager only talks to me during this annual appraisal time. Or some people even say, I never even received an annual appraisal, right? With the ongoing feedback, we monitor it closely and we make sure that those that are enrolled in the pilot phase of it, they're actually participating. Ongoing feedback as well is, like I said, it's ongoing. So you can go in there at any point in time. You don't have to worry about losing things that, if you think about something, you go in there and you put it in there. And then your manager, like I said, if you are scared to put in your self-appraisal, what you want from your manager, and ongoing feedback, we make you tell your manager what you want from them. So the questions are different. There's no competencies. There is a question, there's an opportunity to put goals in there, but it's focused on what did this person do best? What were the challenges? It forces the manager also to put development opportunities for someone. So they have to think about ways to enlarge you, and then it also forces you to think about development opportunities for yourself. So the ongoing feedback module is like all the tools that I just gave for the self-appraisal, we've embedded them in the ongoing feedback to make it a part of the culture. So I don't see any other questions. I'm hoping that I answered all of those to the best that you were looking for, but any other questions or any other comments?
This is Darren. Hi.
Hey, Darren.
I think that this is great information. The one thing that I was wondering was when you do the appraisal versus the ongoing, the goals can be significantly different in terms of long-term and short-term. Not necessarily be different, but I guess, because you're going to be meeting on an ongoing basis, they could, one will be more, I guess, hold more weight than the other. So how would you, do that? Let's say 1 month or one, I guess the question is, how many times do you have an ongoing appraisal? How many times is it conducted? And then two, how do you manage the goals that you bring into those appraisals?
So that's a great question. So the ongoing feedback, they're done 4 times a year, no less than at least 3 times a year, no more than 4 times. So right, there's 4 quarters in the year. You do 1 each quarter, but no less than 3. So for example, within our division HR, we do the ongoing feedback. We did away with the ongoing for us, but we only do 3 times a year. If you can do 4, then you do 4, but the pressure is just at least 3 times a year. As far as goals, perfect question too. So like I said, for me, I have annual goals that I have to accomplish. For my team, it's a combination. So I do annual goals. However, the goals that I have to do annually, for what I need from them, I break them into quarterly type goals. Then there might be goals I'll ask them to, we're getting ready for FY23, and 2 weeks ago I sent an email to my team as we're thinking about FY23 goals, to think about what you want to accomplish for the year. They're on their feedback, they'll have goals that they want for the entire year, but what we do for the quarterly check-ins is we'll say, tell me how you are in progressing for those annual goals. So it's still the maybe annual goals, but where you're just doing little check-ins, whereas with the ongoing feedback stuff, or not the ongoing feedback, with the annual review, sometimes there's no check-in, and at the end of the year, it's that, you didn't meet this goal, but we didn't know where each other was. Now with the ongoing, we do small little check-ins every quarter to make sure that we're meeting the needs that we need to get us to where we need to be.
Thank you for that.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, if there's no other questions.
Tanya.
Yeah.
I have a question about, I guess, feedback, and it's related to the self-appraisal, because what I found is that my boss typically bases her appraisal of me on what I've written in the self-appraisal. And generally what she writes, she usually diminishes any of the accomplishments that I've identified. And I've tried on a few occasions to ask her for other examples, and she can't give me any examples other than the examples that I've given her. So what strategy would you have for, trying to get some useful feedback?
Yeah, I've experienced that as well, not only myself, but then also hearing it from staff. And unfortunately, that's something that happens far too often here. And for anyone that didn't hear it, it's that, you know, in this example given, the supervisor often just, as opposed to giving the feedback, copies verbatim often what you hear. I think it's, you know, in honesty, and what my approach might be may not be the best for you, but the way that I've handled it and the way that I recommend is to call them out in a professional manner on that fact. And the way that I've done it with my bosses, you know, if that's happened before, it's a matter of, I realize that, you know, I'm not sure if you realized, but the answer that you gave or what you wrote down is identical to what I wrote. Was this an error? You know, and call out to it indirectly. You know, maybe it's an error, and give her the opportunity or him the opportunity to fix it. Give them the opportunity to acknowledge it, and then give them the opportunity to say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that," and go back to correct it. If that doesn't work, I say continuously attempt to talk. But if that doesn't work, there's some situations where you continuously try, and it's not because of anything that you're not doing. It's just that you have someone who does not or is not receptive to giving you the feedback you need. I recommend at that point escalating it, and not in a negative way, but just you have, you know, our jobs in human resources are supposed to be neutral third parties that work on neither, you know, I'm a manager, but I do not work for, you know, when it comes to my HR hat, I'm neither for the side of Penn and the managers or the employees. I'm neutral. And my job is to help to on the side of whatever is right, right? And if I have someone comes to me that says, you know, I've tried to talk to my manager, here's what's going on, you know, a good HR person will help you through that situation by trying to get involved and helping the manager realize why giving you feedback is important. So I would say first try the approach of talking to your manager directly, but coming off in, you know, an indirect way of calling them out. And if that doesn't help, I would escalate it to your HR designee. And if that doesn't help, Central Human Resources, the group that I sit under, I would say come to us and let us help you facilitate and navigate through that situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? All right. If not, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Valerie. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time. If you have any other questions, please feel free to either email it to me directly or send it in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Darren. I'm going to take it from here. And I will say that, let me just get myself together here. I apologize. You really gave us some really good information. I mean, I'm just going over some of my notes that I looked at. I actually created one, like a little acronym for one of them that you gave us, which was, I called it B square R square A.
And what is that?
That was be prepared, be presented, receive, reflect, and avoid. I just think that right there kind of encapsulates a lot of what is of how you should approach this new process, and be able to engage the your supervisor with regards to, you know, partnering with your goals and what you're trying to aspire to be in the organization. You know, and I think that there are so many opportunities. Some of us forget that, you know, once we get the position that they think that's it. And a lot of times we forget how important we are. You like my acronym? Oh, thank you. Sometimes we forget how important we are and how very important our skills are. I'm glad that you mentioned the PQI piece, because to me, that really, that was really important about marketing yourself. Like who are you, using your resume, your CV, in order to say, hey, this is where I'm at. I know that we had a question earlier in terms of how can we gauge the market, right? In terms of our skills to see where do we fit in that in terms of our productivity, in terms of our value to the organization. And hey, listen, what's wrong with marketing yourself? I mean, I think that's what it's all about, At some point, I appreciated the review, the goals, expectations, setting up that folder, which is I'm going to do that actually when we finish this conversation, because
Good.
now my brain is just all over the place with ideas, and it really does help you structure your appraisal, your evaluation moving forward. And I think that is something that for me will be very advantageous. And I appreciate you. I wanted to know about GAP, and you explained that very well. Selling yourself and marketing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you really gave us an overall view of what to expect moving forward. And I just know that Penn has a jewel in you. So I want to personally thank you for being with us today. We're going to make this a short program, unless we have any more questions or concerns.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question? Okay.
Yes.
Present your question. Yes.
I know, first of all, I want to thank you for all this good information. I'm looking forward to being able to review it and take note and put some things in place, but to share it with my daughter who's, in a 28 and in a different space than I, with the whole process of needing to know, and she's really struggling in some spaces with how to navigate and how to advocate for herself. She's a school teacher, but she's at a charter school, so she's not working with and have the support of a union and some of the things that come from being in a union. So trying to navigate those spaces. But with regards to positioning yourself for a raise, and I know that that's a very challenging conversation for most, is it best sometimes, as you were given the description of looking forward and getting job descriptions that's ahead of where you want to be, whether it's in your, I'm assuming, I heard that as whether it's inside of your institution or outside, that sometimes it's maybe more strategic to make the move and negotiate and move than to negotiate in-house for that increase.
That's a great question, Pamela. And well, that's a great question. So really quick, you mentioned whether union, non-union. I think just to note the distinctions there. Majority of Penn employees are non-union. It's easier to negotiate in non-union settings because once you're in a union, you're like binded to the collective bargaining agreement. You're binded to the increases that are negotiated for you then. It's a lot tighter than being in a non-union setting. So just that's when I talk about negotiating within the union and external, it's a lot easier to negotiate for yourself external to a union environment. It's always easier to leave an organization and get more than it is to negotiate within an organization. That's just normal. Whether I'm the VP of HR, if I was to leave here and go work for Cornell University, I probably would be making way more there than I am now. And then when I came back to Penn, I usually would probably make what I wanted to make. Does that make sense? That's why usually you see people who leave an organization and then come back to it. And sometimes people do it because they just left to see if something was better and they realize the grass isn't always greener and then they come back. Sometimes too, it's there's that old adage of sometimes you have to leave for them to realize and then you come back and then you make more. So there is no one best answer for that, but sometimes it is, the norm to be able to leave and get what you want, come back, and then you get the salary that you needed. Oftentimes, unfortunately, the way I think as organizations, we do ourselves a disservice because we build systems in place that we think we're giving people what they need to get them where they need to, but then we hinder ourselves with how much we're able to give at one time. And then someone coming in externally is able to get to where we want to be, if that makes sense. So For your daughter, I think it depends on what kind of organization she's working within. Sometimes you have people that are really good that advocate for themselves constantly, and those are the ones that you see that are making what they need to be, because at every point in turn, they're constantly saying and justifying why they needed more. Whereas you have others that you either wait for the annual review, or you might wait once every 3 years and then you ask for it. It depends on the organization, and it depends on the person.
Thank you. And then I had another
Yeah.
question. Looking at, are there ever times in HR where there's somewhat of a 360-degree look? Sometimes we're in management positions and we think we may be doing better in our role than we are. Like for you to maybe be a manager, to know that somebody that's a supervisor under you, when you get, is there a way to get feedback from the people they supervise to know that maybe they aren't good at it because you see it from one perspective? They're showing you one lens. But if you're
Yes.
not looking at the people with whom they are responsible for, you won't get the other side of it.
So the I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. I know that we don't necessarily just come out with them for managers and do the 360s, but we do give 360s during some certain periods, such as there's some leadership programs at Penn that offers the 360 feedback for managers. I think Leadership at Penn is one, Essentials of Management and Amp Up. Those are right now, I think, the only structured, true essentials, or the only true structured 360 feedback opportunities that are given. And then there's one-off situations where you might have a manager that is getting some kind of executive coaching, and during the executive coaching process, then their coach offers 360 feedback. But no, we haven't built in anything formal just yet. One thing I know that we're moving towards, and I'm not on this team that's reviewing it, but we're moving towards Workday, talent development, and the Workday system. And I believe there might be some capacity for that as well, but nothing largely just yet. Does that help?
Yep, thank you. I was just curious to know if it is still being utilized, and if so, like how, because I think it's pretty good feedback. I think sometimes we think we might be doing a better job at something than we are doing, and I think sometimes we might be threatened by people who we supervise
Yeah,
and thus don't provide them what they need.
that's true. That's true. You actually just gave me to a good point, and I think that the conversation with Tanya and I think Darren, you had a question too that tied up into one of the things. One, if I leave you all with anything today, short of saying market yourself and grow yourself, one, if you all remember, I think Val asked the question about what's the difference between the ongoing feedback and the annual performance. You want to really make sure that during take the feedback sessions, and I think Tanya, this helps with your questions too about, for the supervisors, just really copies and pastes everything that you're doing. You want to make sure that you're taking ownership of this process. If your supervisor isn't the person that likes to receive regular feedback from you, they're not the type that likes to give regular feedback from you, they're not the type that they look for any kind of assessment of how you're doing, how's your relationship, the pros, the cons, weighing any of that. This is the time for you to take it literally into your hands. It's the time for you to, if you've never communicated before, be a person that communicates, to fight for the work that you're doing, but that also pushes them to encourage them that you need and that you want that feedback. But I think that what you've raised, Pamela, with the 360s, that's actually a good insight. And I'm gonna note to myself to talk to our head of talent to just discuss it, to see if there's any other, that we do it informally through those cohort-based programs, but not every supervisor goes through them, right? So if you're not a supervisor who goes through the program, then you might miss that opportunity. But then the other question is, it's one of those things similarly to the annual, or not annual, but to the performance, the staff engagement surveys that Penn's done. I think I've been here for 8 years and we've done 2. it's only as good as what people are going to do with it. So even though we come out with them, then the onus is on the supervisors to actually look at what's given and do something with it. And I think that's a whole nother avenue that we have to discuss and figure out what that would look like. Because they can always do a 360, but what are you going to do with the feedback? You have to be open to receive it, you know?
I looked in the chat and it looks like Stephen has a question. I would like to have a session on effective negotiation.
Yeah, I guess it was more of a comment. I was just saying, like, negotiation is a skill. And I think that you do all your homework, you present yourself, you say, this is the number I'm shooting for. How do you actually get that number? Because you can say, I want this, but I feel like, your manager, whoever, is not going to help you to get that number. They're going to offer you something. And if you don't push and get higher, then they won't give it to you. It's like, so how do you really go through the steps to get that number higher?
So we can table it, and Darren, Colleen, and Valerie, we can talk about it offline and see what it will look like. I can tell you, Stephen, that while I can help give you the tools on how to negotiate, I can't necessarily give you the tools to help your supervisor land you that, right? In all honesty, and I'll use myself as an example. Like I said, I negotiate for a living. I teach it within HR. I can train you on how to do it. I do it for the university. However, when it comes to myself, it's funny because I can go to my boss and say that here's, I want a salary increase and here's why. I list everything. And he'll combat it with, I don't know if we can do it, but I know you as a negotiator, so I know X, Y, Z, Z, Z. Like literally, he'll tell me he already knows that because of my negotiating background, here are all the different things that he needs to put in place. So in an example of that, you're right, 100% of your supervisors might come back with ways to combat that, but it's then being able to, I think one of the things that it will help in learning the negotiation skills is even though they come with ways to combat that, you are more prepared and have 10 other examples of ways to help negotiate and sell. So I'm saying all that to say that yes, I agree, and I can work with the group afterwards to see how we can put something together.
That would be great. Thanks.
I agree, that would be helpful.
It's not easy, but we can do that.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you personally for offering your time to give us this valuable information. I will say that this program, as well as the other programs, will be on our YouTube. And also, if you have time, I put the link in our channel for you. It won't be in there today, but if you give it a day or two, this program will be posted in there as well for you to reflect and to be able to, go back and listen to this valuable information. So I personally want to thank you. Pronounce your last name, Dr. Joy.
That's fine.
Dr. Joy is fine.
That's more than fine.
I appreciate you, and I know that the ARC appreciates you. And I also want to let people know if you have any, if you would like any information about the ARC, you can go to our website, aarc.upenn.edu. We have an events section in there. You can also look and sign up for some future events that's coming up. We have the Jazz for King that's coming up. We only have a few tickets left because people always jump on it. So you can go, if you're interested, go ahead and register. But thank you so much.
Wait, before you hang up, Darren, we also, there's still time to register for Women of Color at Penn annual celebration, which will take place on March the 18th. If you don't have the email, let us know. We'll make sure that you get the link to register.
And there you have it. Thank you so much. Thank everyone for being with us this afternoon. If you have time, enjoy your lunch, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you, and have a